Japan and ASEAN agreed to boost maritime security cooperation. Palestine seeks probe into deadly Israeli raid on Gaza hospital. Hello, good afternoon, and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mohanapriya, and you're watching World Today. Southeast Asian and Japanese leaders have agreed to boost maritime security cooperation in the face of Beijing's growing assertiveness, seen most recently in a spate of confrontations with Philippine vessels. In a joint statement issued after a summit in Tokyo and without identifying China, Japan and ASEAN agreed to strengthen dialogue and cooperation for the maintenance of maritime security and safety and maritime order based on the rule of law.
"分断と対立が深まり、世界が複合的な危機に直面する中、日本は自由で開かれたインド太平洋の要である ASEAN とともにこれに立ち向かってまいります。
On the sidelines of the summit, Japan and the Philippines exchanged a memorandum of cooperation between each country's coast guards. Last month, Japan agreed to help the Philippines buy coast guard vessels and to supply a radar system, and the two are discussing allowing troop deployments on each other's soil. It expressed serious concerns last week about dangerous actions after the latest tense confrontation between Philippine and Chinese vessels at Flashpoint Reefs, which included a collision and Chinese ships shooting water cannon. Japan also announced it would deepen ties with Malaysia and provide 400 million yen for warning and surveillance equipment. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, and its increased deployment of vessels and other methods to assert its claims in disputed areas have riled nations across the region as well as Washington. Palestinian Health Minister Mai Al-Kaila has called for an urgent probe after Israeli occupation forces were accused of crushing Palestinians, including wounded patients, using bulldozers in the yard of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. On Saturday, doctors and other witnesses said Israeli forces bulldozed tents housing displaced Palestinians near the hospital, one of the 11 hospitals still functioning inside Gaza since Israel launched its military offensive on 7th October and crushed them to death. Witnesses said civilians were deliberately targeted. Several videos shared on social media also appeared to show people crushed under the rubble in front of the Kamal Adwan Hospital. Al-Kaila urged the international community to investigate what happened at the hospital and not ignore the war crimes taking place in Gaza. She also highlighted that the Israeli army destroyed the southern part of the hospital and said 12 infants remained inside the incubators in the hospital without water or food. While Israeli forces have now withdrawn from the hospital, the army said it has detained 90 people during the raid. Israeli forces raided the hospital last Tuesday after besieging and shelling it for several days. And in another development, WHO aid workers said Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital is completely overwhelmed and can only provide the most basic care to patients. According to WHO's Emergency Medical Team's coordinator Sean Casey, Al-Shifa Hospital, the biggest medical facility in the Palestinian territories, has been reduced to a trauma stabilization point.
They can only provide the most basic care for people with very serious injuries and very serious illnesses. There are women delivering in these common spaces that are just absolutely packed to the brim. Most patients are on the floor, a few are in beds and stretchers behind me. The emergency department is just covered in blood and there are very few staff. Children are being treated on the floor for serious injuries, for burns, for open wounds. They're struggling to get operating theaters working again. There is no intensive care capacity, and it's almost impossible to transfer patients out of Shifa. It's absolute chaos.
WHO said on Saturday that it participated in a joint United Nations mission to deliver health supplies and assess the situation at Al-Shifa. The team delivered medicines and surgical supplies, orthopedic surgery equipment, and anesthesia materials and drugs to the hospital, which was currently minimally functional. The Israeli army said it had uncovered the biggest Hamas tunnel in the Gaza Strip so far, just a few hundred meters from a key border crossing. Such was its size that small vehicles would be able to travel within the tunnel. The Israeli army also released a video, it says, showed Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, traveling in a car through the tunnel near the Erez crossing in Gaza. Showing the tunnel to media, chief military spokesperson described it as Sinwar's secret and said millions of dollars had been put into the project. Reuters could not independently verify the identity of the passenger, the location, or the date when the video was filmed. North Korea fired another internationally banned long-range ballistic missile today after Pyongyang voiced outrage over deeper nuclear cooperation between Seoul and Washington. The ballistic launch followed firing overnight Sunday by the north of a short-range missile, extending a record-breaking number of weapons tests this year that have been condemned by the West. The back-to-back launches also come after another bout of fearsome rhetoric between North Korea and the US-South Korean allies. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the ballistic missile had been fired into the East Sea, referring to the body of water also known as the Sea of Japan. The JCS added the military had heightened its alert posture and was closely sharing information regarding North Korea's ballistic missile with the United States and Japan. Japan's Coast Guard said the missile appeared to have already fallen and warned vessels to stay away from fallen objects. Coming up next, attack at Mexico holiday party leaves 12 dead. Pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai is set to stand trial today in Hong Kong, where he faces internationally condemned national security charges that could send him to jail for life. Lai, 76, founded the now-shuttered Chinese-language tabloid Apple Daily, which often bashed Beijing and supported the huge protest movement that roiled Hong Kong in 2019. He stands accused of collusion with foreign forces under a sweeping national security law that Beijing imposed on the finance hub in 2020. The trial, scheduled to be heard in open court over the next 80 working days, will be closely watched as a barometer for the city's political freedoms and judicial independence. A rags-to-riches millionaire who made his fortune selling clothes before expanding into media, Lai will be tried without a jury and has been denied the lawyer of his choice. The United States, Britain, the European Union and the United Nations have all expressed concerns about Lai's case, but Beijing has dismissed them as smears and interference. At least 12 people were killed and another dozen were wounded in an attack on Sunday on a pre-Christmas party in central Mexico. Authorities in the state of Guanajuato said the attack occurred in the town of Salvatierra, reportedly at a hacienda or ranch that can be rented out for festivities. Authorities said another 12 people who were wounded have been taken to hospital. They also said that it was not immediately clear what kinds of weapons were used. The Tierra Negra Foundation, which promotes social projects in the area, said the victims were young people who were participating in posadas, religious gatherings that celebrate aspects of the story of Christmas. Guanajuato is one of the most violent states in Mexico, due in large part to the presence and activity of criminal gangs, including a pair of feuding drug cartels. Salvatierra Mayor German Cervantes said they were thoroughly cooperating with the prosecutor's office. Similar attacks have been recorded in recent years in Guanajuato, which this year topped the list of states with the most homicides in Mexico, with 3,029 so far, according to official figures. An intense storm in Argentina has left at least 13 people dead and many others injured in the southwestern port city of Bahia Blanca in Buenos Aires. Now, this was confirmed by its mayor Federico Subcieles and local authorities. Authorities said winds reached up to 140 kilometers per hour in the city and at least 300 people had been evacuated on Sunday. The city council said the situation caused by the storm was a catastrophe, reporting multiple injuries, some extremely serious. The council added that the most serious situation was at the sports club Bahiense del Norte, where medical emergency and civil defense workers were on site. In a statement on Sunday, Subcieles declared 3 days of mourning. He reminded citizens of the importance of keeping safe by staying at home, adding that they were still in an emergency situation with electrical risk and risk of falling trees and structures. According to authorities, the city's emergency teams received 103,544 calls about downed trees, power lines and signs, among other damage. The office of Argentina's President Javier Milei said the National Cabinet was working with provincial and municipal councils to help the victims and respond to the damage. Meanwhile, heavy rain from a coastal through linked to ex-tropical cyclone Jasper cut off several tourist towns in Australia's north along the Great Barrier Reef, forcing evacuations as some residents fled to rooftops to escape fast-rising waters. Cairns, the gateway town to the Great Barrier Reef and home to more than 150,000 people, received around 600 millimeters of rain over 40 hours through early Monday morning. All international and domestic flights from Cairns Airport were cancelled today. Major flood warnings have been issued as rivers remained above danger levels and were expected to break records set in 1977. Artificial rain was used for the first time in Pakistan in a bid to combat hazardous levels of smog in the megacity of Lahore. In the first experiment of its kind in the South Asian country, planes equipped with cloud seeding equipment flew over 10 areas of the city, often ranked one of the worst places globally for air pollution. Teams from the UAE, along with 2 planes, used 48 flares to create the rain. The UAE has increasingly been using cloud seeding, sometimes referred to as artificial rain or blue skying, to create rain in the arid expanse of the country. Lahore suffers the most from the toxic smog, choking the lungs of more than 11 million residents during the winter season. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić declared victory in a snap parliamentary election after pollsters projected his ruling Serbian Progressive Party, or SNS, was on track to easily win. Vučić said an alliance headed by SNS, Serbia Must Not Stop, would hold a majority in parliament, and there was already important work to do on the day after the election. Based on votes counted in a sample of polling stations, pollsters Ipsos and Cedid predicted the populist SNS won 46.2% of votes, while the opposition centre-left Serbia Against Violence Alliance is set to come second with 23.2%. The preliminary vote count suggested SNS will have a slim majority of at least 127 deputies, enough to rule alone, but it is expected to seek coalition partners to cement its dominance of parliament. Polls closed in Chile on Sunday after millions went to the polls to decide whether to replace their constitution, which dates back to the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship, with an even more conservative text. This is the second time in as many years that Chile has held a vote to replace its current constitution, a promise born after large-scale, passionate and sometimes violent protests against inequality gripped the nation in 2019. But many Chileans are now voicing mistrust and disenchantment with the process. The first assembly elected to draft a new text was dominated by left-wing forces, and the draft focused on social, indigenous, environmental and gender rights. But that text was overwhelmingly rejected by voters last September. The electorate swung right for the second draft, and voters elected an assembly dominated by conservative parties. That text was now up for Sunday's vote. Polls suggest that voters are likely to reject this proposal too, although the gap tightened in the lead-up to the referendum. Chad holds a referendum on a new constitution on Sunday that looks unlikely to mend deep divisions between the junta and opposing groups that have fueled a political and security crisis in one of the world's poorest countries. The military authorities have called the vote a vital stepping stone to elections next year, a long-promised return to democratic rule after they seized power in 2021 when President Idris Deby was killed on the battlefield during a conflict with insurgents. The proposed constitution would establish autonomous communities with local assemblies and councils of traditional chiefdoms, among other changes. Decades of instability and economic mismanagement have hampered development in the oil-producing Central African country, where nearly 40% of its 16 million people depend on humanitarian aid. Around 8 million Chadians are registered to vote in the referendum. Provisional results are expected to be announced on 24th September. The military regime in Chad is one of several juntas in West and Central Africa, which has seen 8 coups since 2020, sparking concerns of a democratic backslide in the region. Coming up in sports, Liverpool failed to go top as Man United earn an Anfield draw. FIFA announced details regarding the new format for the Club World Cup on Sunday, saying the first edition will take place in 2025 and feature European heavyweights Real Madrid and Manchester City. The tournament will take place from 15th June to 13th, last 16 knockout round.
Now, who qualifies? Well, first of all, we will have 12 Europeans, 6 South Americans, 4 from the other continents, 1 from Oceania, and 1 representing the host country, the United States of America. These clubs qualify, first of all, by winning their continental competition. So the Copa Libertadores, the Champions League winners, and so on, of all the continents, they qualify. The remaining teams, they qualify through a specific ranking, which is established by FIFA, and as far as the European teams, which are 8, it's a UEFA ranking that the clubs know based on the Champions League results of the last 4 years.
Now, Liverpool missed out on reclaiming top spot as they were held to a goalless draw by Manchester United at Anfield in the Premier League early this morning, ending their perfect home record this season. Jurgen Klopp's side had been knocked out of first place by Arsenal earlier on Sunday and would have recaptured a place at the summit with a win, but lacked their usual goal threat. A United side shorn of confidence after a miserable week held on grimly for their point, although they've now scored just once on their last 8 visits to Liverpool. The closest the hosts came to scoring was a Trent Alexander-Arnold shot that grazed the post, while Rasmus Højlund had United's best opportunity. In the 94th minute, Diogo Dalot picked up 2 bookings in a matter of seconds for dissent to be sent off for Manchester United, as he angrily complained about the decision on Michael Oliver over a throw-in, but no further action would happen as the game ended goalless. Second-placed Liverpool have 38 points from 17 games, with leaders Arsenal on 39, while United are 7th with 28. The Merseyside-based club will be at home once again for a mouth-watering clash against Arsenal. The winner of the game against Mikel Arteta's side will top the table on Christmas Day. Meanwhile, Arsenal returned to the top following a 2-0 victory over Brighton, courtesy of second-half goals from Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz. The following are the results from last night's Premier League action. Meanwhile, over at the Bundesliga, Harry Kane scored a goal in each half as Bayern Munich brushed off Stuttgart 3-0 to stay 4 points behind Bayer Leverkusen, who beat Eintracht Frankfurt earlier by the same scoreline. Now, Kane's double took him to 20 league goals from 14 matches so far this season. Leverkusen's win meant the perennial German champions started 7 points behind, but Kane settled nerves by netting after 2 minutes, tapping home a pass from Leroy Sane. Bayern had 2 more goals struck off for offside in the opening half, but Kane doubled up early in the second, heading in from close range from a free kick. Kim Min-jae was next to score, heading in another set piece for his first goal in Bayern colours, sealing the game for the home side. Bayern sit 4 points behind Leverkusen and have a game in hand against 15th placed Union Berlin in January. Now, the 3-0 loss to Getafe at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan over the weekend ended Diego Alonso's ruthless 2-month reign as Sevilla coach. The Uruguayan was let go a little over an hour after the final whistle. As the Spanish team gets brought closer to the division's relegation zone, the 48-year-old departs from his position. At the moment, their only cushion above the relegation zone is goal differential. Sevilla will now start looking for a new permanent coach after posting a brief statement indicating they had fired the Uruguayan coach. Appointed after Jose Luis Mendibar's dismissal, Alonso managed only 2 victories in 14 matches. This was the Copa del Rey, and both those games were against teams from lesser divisions, as neither of them occurred in the La Liga or the Champions League. This implies that in the other 12 matches that the Uruguayan was in charge, the Rojiblancos could not manage to secure a single victory. Although he oversaw one of the top 10 Spanish historically best teams during his time as La Liga manager, Alonso also had the poorest record with 5 draws and 3 losses. And on to golf, Thailand's Denwit Buribunsub won his first Asian Tour title and his 3rd event in as many weeks when the 19-year-old beat Sweden's Henrik Stenson by 3 strokes at the season-ending Saudi Open on Sunday. None of the opposition could cope with the continuing seemingly nerveless excellence of Buribunsub, who claimed the $180,000 first prize. Buribunsub has won the Aramco Invitational 2 weeks ago on the Asian Development Tour and followed it up with victory at the Thailand Open last week. He shared the lead at the Riyadh Golf Club after 2 rounds, but lost top spot to compatriot Pachara Kongwatmai on Saturday. But Buribunsub carded a 7 under 64 on Sunday to match the lowest round of the day and finish at 18 under overall after sinking 8 birdies, offset by 1 bogey. After making a birdie putt on the 18th, Buribunsub raised his arms in triumph as he was embraced by his caddy before fellow golfers came onto the green armed with water bottles and drenched the 19-year-old. The former British Open champion Stenson finished second at 15 under, following closely by Australia's Travis Smith, who was a stroke further behind. Britain's Ian Williams clinched his 7th match racing world championship title on Sunday with his China 1 Ningbo team of John Gunderson, Richard Sydenham and Gerard Mitchell. Now, his victory in the 2023 WMRT final sets a new record for the most championship wins in the tour's history. Williams had to work hard to earn his victory, battling Megan Thompson in the semi-finals and Gavin Brady of the United States in the final. Sunday's conditions presented challenges characterized by brisk and gusty northeast winds, reminiscent of Saturday's quarterfinals. Finding a path up the course proved tricky, and whichever team performed the best would gain the advantage, which led to numerous lead changes in each race. The fight for the championship title was some of the closest match racing of the entire regatta. It was Brady who got the first point on the board. The next 3 races all went to Williams, but not without a tough battle. In a thrilling 3rd race, Brady and Williams were changing leads and crossing tacks that were more than a few boat lengths away from each other. But it was Williams and his team who found the favourable shifts and pulled ahead. Brady and his True Blue racing team of Nick Blackman, Tom Powery and Dave Sweet gave Williams a great battle, but missing out on a few critical shifts saw them finish in second.
Siren amaran awal banjir ialah sistem pengesan kenaikan aras air secara automatik. Sistem ini dilengkapi dengan pembesar suara akustik, sistem pemantauan bersepadu dan menggunakan sistem solar sepenuhnya. Selain itu, ia juga berupaya memberi arahan daripada Pusat Kawalan Program Ramalan dan Amaran Banjir Negara ke stesen siren dengan kaedah voice activation. Keupayaan bunyi siren ini boleh menjangkaui 1 hingga 2 kilometer bergantung kepada keadaan topografi setempat. Terdapat 2 jenis siren. Pertama, bunyi siren amaran.
Amaran. Air sungai telah melebihi aras amaran.
Semboyannya kedengaran apabila air sungai melepasi aras amaran dan penduduk diminta bersiap sedia untuk berpindah. Kedua, bunyi siren bahaya.
Bahaya. Air sungai telah melebihi aras bahaya.
Ia diaktifkan setelah air sungai melepasi aras bahaya dan penduduk diminta untuk berpindah serta-merta. Sistem siren amaran awal banjir memberi manfaat kepada masyarakat bersiap siaga menghadapi bencana banjir.
And that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story today, Japan and ASEAN agree to boost maritime security cooperation. Till then, I'm Mohanupriya. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.